very welcome to everyone who's dialed in for this conversation about compassionate curiosity. And I know that it's probably more going to be like an exploration. You know, we're exploring a particular practice, a skill, and we are doing this guided by Dr. Cheryl Williams, who I think could not be a better host and explorer for all of us to actually understand what is compassionate curiosity, how does it fit into the skill set of inclusive leadership, and how do we use it actually? What is it and how do we use it? And without further ado, I have the great pleasure to turn it over to Dr. Cheryl Williams.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us in this morning's or this afternoon's chat on compassionate curiosity, a very near and dear skill that I've been fortunate enough to acquire over the past many years in doing some of my work. So we're going to just jump right in. And as York mentioned, if you have any comments or questions, use the Q&A feature, but also we will have after my presentation a Q&A session if you would like to do something then. So the first thing we talk about when people ask me what I'm working on or what I'm writing about, and I tell them compassionate curiosity is, well, what is it? And compassionate curiosity simply is digging to find out more questions. So as the screen says, it's the ability to dig for more information, to really try to uncover what is going on here without judgment. So you are simultaneously, while you're asking questions or listening actively, identifying what others are thinking and feeling. So it's kind of trying to read the gray, read between the lines from a compassionate standpoint. And we'll certainly drill deeper on that as we go. So our conversation is centered around the 5 W's and how. I'm just going to pretty much run us through who, what, when, where, why, and how. So those are the questions that I intend to respond to or chat about during our session here. So who? Curiosity is a natural human state, as they say. We are born curious. The curiosity of a child, and as you remember when you were a child growing up, your sense of wonder, your sense of awe, how this is made. You see something for the first time at Disneyland or on television or in your neighborhood, and it's and having that curiosity to then be able to go over and learn more. I have an 8-year-old grandson who was visiting me a couple of weeks ago, and we had a gecko. I live in California. We have a gecko that came into the garden, and I have a granddaughter as well. The grandson immediately went to check out the gecko because he was curious. The granddaughter, who's 11, ran from the gecko, like, ew, because she did not want to have whatever that thing was that was climbing in the running around the garden on her. That childhood sense of wonder and awe is just something we hope in a perfect world we would keep it on through our adulthood and forever. Everybody should and is expected to apply compassionate curiosity to life. So when you hear or see something that, for my grandson's part, it was the gecko, but when you see something at work or at home that makes you raise an eyebrow or you think, what's going on here? How can I learn more about it? How can I feel the what someone else is going through? And that's the compassion. How can I apply compassion? Something that we know in the world today when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, as that's quite nice a space now that many are working in. We recognize to be an inclusive leader, you need to be able to practice curiosity fueled by compassion. So if you start asking questions for just the sake of curiosity, it can quickly nosedive into, are they being nosy? Why are they wanting to be in my business, as you hear some of the young folks say? But it's fueled by compassion, then people, they feel comfortable and they want to share. They begin to feel a belongingness. And we'll kind of drill a little bit deeper on that as we go, Jörg. So global organizations really beg a special need. And for someone who I've had the truly the pleasure and the fortune to live or work in a little over 80 countries in my role in human resource or as a professor. And I recognize that so many things are different from the way I was raised, from the different way I live here in my home. But it's excitement that when I get on that plane and I land in a different place. Now, it doesn't have to be a foreign country. I can land two streets over from where I'm living and I can find difference. But it really is in global organizations because the ethnicity, the gender, and many things pop out and can really collide if not appropriately understood. So, but giving a little bit more definition to it. So when I use the word compassion, yes, it also means love, and it means all the things you do when you're with your loved one. But how I'm also using the term here is how we connect the dots when we're talking about compassion in the workplace, at home, in the community. It's a quality that combines with the authentic. I can't stress enough the word authentic here, concern for the well-being of the other. So the whole goal of assuming positive intent, assuming that, and I shouldn't say assuming, but it's really trying to understand what I need to know more about the situation and what's going on in you so I can better process whatever we're working on. And it's through curiosity that I do that by asking my questions. And towards the end of my session here, I'm going to give us some actual things of what it looks like, what curiosity looks like. In other words, what you're doing. It's about proactively seeking out different points of view, listening to others, learning, which also sometimes means doing cultural due diligence or doing due diligence, and then reflecting on what you've heard. You know, there's oftentimes, you know, in my role now, I work for organizations where I am a corporate anthropologist, which puts me in working with employees quite a bit, working with customers, clients, and fans as an entertainment company. And so oftentimes I'll go in and I'll see something that I don't understand and it looks odd on the surface. So then I start looking my questions, I start asking, and I start listening to try to understand what's really going on here because people often ask me, well, Cheryl, what's your advice here? Well, before I can give advice, I need to know what exactly is going on. I was working in Israel one time, and a very dear friend of mine who happens to be Orthodox Jewish, you know, we were working on some problem solving. And I had come over there in my typical American thinking that I'm being all wonderful. I started giving him the response, the answers, the solutions to the problem. And he was so polite and so kind as a gentleman. He said, "Oh, Cheryl, I can tell you've done a lot of really good work. And these solutions sound wonderful. But could you tell me what is the problem? What was the problem that you were trying to address?" To this day, that's been over 20 years ago. I will always remember that. What problem are we addressing? So when do we do compassionate curiosity? First of all, it requires our emotional presence. We have to be fully engaged, paying attention, being naturally as inquisitive as we can, non-judgmental listening. So if someone says something, try as best you can, relax the way it's said initially, because people say things with different tones, different contexts, and you could be thinking one thing and they're thinking another thing. So we want to recognize it from ourselves. It starts with ourselves. We have to be very mindful. Matter of fact, you'll find this subject matter and mindfulness often partner together. Curiosity and allyship. Allyship, you know, is when you are sponsoring, you're working with someone that might be considered in a marginalized situation. What can you do to bring voice to it, to bring action to it? So curiosity is one of the things that spearheads allyship. Champions of equity and inclusion at work can start to unearth. Here's the deep roots of racial and ethnic inequities and take meaningful action to destroy them and in their place, sow seeds of equity and understanding. Immediately after the George Floyd murder, which was horrific, and it was the knees felt around the world, and in many ways it brought people together to champion, to want to do something different. It was that curiosity to what really happened, that understanding of why is it that here in the US and around the world, why was that Black Lives Matter social movement so necessary then, when many people were saying, but all lives matter? Well, sure, the human beings, but if you keep it in the context, the curiosity of really understanding, well, what do you mean by that? You know, I had someone describe it to me, and they said, we know, Cheryl, when we say save the whales, we don't mean only save the whales. You know, that's in addition to it, not to equate that with it. So once again, curiosity and compassion can really help us to peel back and understand what's going on racially and ethnically that may be different, whether it's historical, whether it's how someone has reacted, have been treated, a word that's been used, a label that's been used that's not appropriate. Where do you apply compassionate curiosity? Everywhere in the corner. You should think about waking up in the morning and being compassionately curious. My husband woke up this morning. He works at a hospital. And as I got up, he was wishing me good luck on my presentation this morning. So I thanked him. But I was curious as to what he was doing today. And was he going to be able to listen in? Of course, that brings a whole nother layer of anxiety, if I should say. And so just the spearhead and the way I asked him, I didn't say, his name is Kenny. I didn't say, what are you doing today? Although I could have said that because we've been married a long time and he would have got it. But instead I said, you know, I just kind of wanted to know what's on your schedule today, you know, in case I want to talk with you at some point. And that's just a very simple thing of at home. And the way I said it to him, you know, he told me, not that he wouldn't have told me anyway, but he told me. So once again, home, work, school, the community, everywhere. I had a relative visiting me this weekend, and we went to a really nice restaurant at one of the beach down here, close to our beaches, one of the beaches here in Orange County. And we had gotten service that wasn't exactly what we had wanted. And my cousin spoke up and said something and to the server. And I said, you know what, let's maybe tone down and not say anything here, not because we weren't getting the bad service, but if you look around, you see that service got a lot going on. So the compassionate curiosity made, and she said, oh, you know that you're right, Cheryl, like that. So that was just being that in that moment. Perhaps we made that person's day. Back to what it means, we made them have a much better day because of how we handled a situation I'm sure they didn't even want to have happen. Why have I spent so much time reading about and writing about and teaching about the skill of compassionate curiosity? I am so committed to this in so many ways. When we do express our curiosity with compassion, we seek to take over or apprehend is the word, the other's experience. When we talk about others, you've heard the term other awareness that marries self-awareness, and you really want, as best you can, step into other awareness. That can be very easy. That can be very difficult because not all the times are things visible about what a person is thinking, feeling, doing, acting. You don't know what's maybe going on in the head, so you can't always read it. So then we need to ask questions. We need to do things to try to understand it. And context is everything, a frame of reference. So how you're applying your frame of reference to what's actually been going on is curiosity, is compassion that helps us understand what it is. So therefore, what it's like to be the other person going through this at a certain time. It can be understood, but not replaced for a person in a privileged community or identity. Oftentimes that's the white male, heterosexual male, often, not always, often. And oftentimes when that person is more in a marginalized community, they are African, the African background, Asian, Native Americans, depending on where you are, where you might be in the world. It could be religious based. Certainly it's not just about race or ethnicity. So when you have those two dichotomies at play, what is it like to feel the other person. And you may not have any experience to really understand that. It's quite possible. So you ask questions. You pay attention to what's going on around you, to perceive, to feel it, to think it, to evaluate it. You know, when I was working on my doctorate, I lived for a little over 2 years in the Amazon jungle, in the rainforest there. And I had the wonder to be able to embed myself with some of the maroon tribes there. And because my goal was to understand what is it from a communication standpoint that is African. Because I was seeing that if I go to Africa, it's a lot of other mixed cultures there. So this particular, where I went in South America, was very remote, very remote. So when I was seeking my gaining entry to want to go work there, to want to go live there to learn, obviously, I just didn't want to say, I want to land in your village, I want to live here, and I want to study you. That couldn't have been more offensive. I mean, I wouldn't have wanted anybody in my house doing that. But by being compassionately curious every single day, every single moment, they couldn't wait to share and show me and include me and make me feel that I belong. And I've been going back to that area for over 25 years now. That is how much they made me feel comfortable in doing that. In other words, compassionate curiosity enables you to put yourself in the shoes of others. And as one saying goes, in order to put yourself in the shoes of others, you have to take your shoes off. Nobody wears two pairs of shoes at the same time. When I was living in the Amazon rainforest, studying, working with, living with, becoming a member of the tribal communities there that were very remote, I did as best I can to learn and step into their world, stepping out of mine. And that is why compassionate curiosity was very helpful for me there. So how can we practice what I'm going to call integration? How can we practice our normal, everyday things that we do, things that we feel when it comes to being compassionate, curious? There's something called micro compassions. Now, many of you on this podcast may have heard of microaggressions, micro inequities, micro affirmations. Micro compassions are the really small, tiny things you do that make someone feel welcome. A simple smile, a raised eyebrow in a good way, compliments. I mean, even at work, even in the days of being careful of how you might compliment someone that's not offensive, saying things that if someone comes to work one day and they have very long hair and the very next day is very, very short, it's not to just be ignored and say, oh, because you're afraid to compliment them on the hair. Say, oh, I see you got a haircut. That's and that how cool. So smiling, compliments, as it makes sense, equity, being mindful that equality is certainly in places in the world. We have equality. We have civil rights laws, labor laws that try to give us that sense so everybody gets the same thing. But when you're talking about people, when you're talking about working across identities, across cultures, then what is correct and proper for me may not be the same correct and proper for your. What I may need, you may not need. So whatever it is in the workplace or your home, we need to be very mindful that just equity. If I'm going to serve and provide lunch for my team that day, and if I know that some of my team is maybe fasting because of their religion, or some are maybe don't eat certain meats, then I need to be mindful of how I'm going to have a menu, if at all, based on what's going on. And diversity. It's easy to seek diversity. You can't be diverse by yourself. Diversity means there's at least two people there. So when you get a chance, whether once again it's in the workplace, whether it's including your friends, your zone, be as diverse, reach out. You see in the middle is kind of a image that somewhat looks like an iceberg. At least that's what I think it looks like, as an iceberg. Often when we're teaching culture, we teach it using the iceberg metaphor about what you see above the line of an iceberg is not necessarily the why of what's underneath an iceberg. So same thing with when you're applying compassionate curiosity. So what I just talked about, you do it, you can see it. But what you can't see is the payoff. You can't see how someone now is made to feel they're included, how someone is now made to feel that they belong. You can't always see the fact that you're being curious by asking questions. But all of that packaged together is what you do to feel and be more integrated in your everyday life for this. So in practice, it's a couple of things. When you're talking about, and I mentioned a few of them, active listening and connections. When you're talking about, I made myself a couple of notes that I wanted to share when we're talking about that. So when you talk about active listening, that's listening for understanding, not just to be heard. So you're listening to really understand. So you ask questions to clarify, to confirm when things are going on. So you know that what's happening is you're on the right page. I had a couple of things that I wanted to share. Let's see. So I know oftentimes when I'm doing just teaching communication courses or other types of classes, how one listens is very important. If, for example, debaters, not always, but when you debate, you tend to listen for point counterpoint. What I'm talking about is you're listening for understanding. You need to really make sense that that's happening. When you're having appreciative inquiry, and you've heard of that, and there's a lot of incredible and long work that's underneath that specialty of appreciative inquiry. What that simply means is your understanding. Tell me more. Tell me more. How can I understand this more? This is what I hear you saying, and you're hypothesizing, you're rephrasing, but not rephrasing to put it just in your words. You're trying to rephrase it to put it in the words so you both understand when you're talking about that. Silence is something that's a good skill to use when you're talking about appreciative inquiry as well. Some cultures actually tend to talk more and they're very uncomfortable with space and silence, and other cultures are very good at it. So sometimes pause is good. And then self-disclosure. Here's the thing about self-disclosure, and there's also some wonderful research that's been done on that, for self-disclosure. The more I tell you about me, the more you most likely will tell me about you. For those of you who may have seen the movie Shrek, the donkey, well, Shrek is the guy, but the donkey is trying to explain to Shrek self-disclosure. So the donkey uses what they call the onion theory. Of course, they're talking about eating onions, but that's another story for those of you who've seen the movie. So he's explaining that, the outer circle of an onion is what everybody sees about an onion. You can see that I'm female. You can see that I'm African-American, or I can tell you I'm African-American. You can see possibly my age. I'm baby boomer. Some of the things you can see. Now I'm going to pretend you can't see some of those things, but nevertheless, I know some of the things you can see. But as I peel back those layers, I have to start telling you about them. You would not know that I'm married until I tell you. You would not know that I'm a mother until I tell you. You would not know that I'm an educator until I tell you that I'm heterosexual, that I'm cisgender female. All the things that that my hobbies, what I like to do. I really, really wanted to be a ballerina when I was in high school, but I had no talent. And my mom explained to me, well, sweetheart, it's not that you can't be one, it's that you shouldn't be one because you can't twirl. So self-disclosure let me know that I could not be that. So instead I decided to go to college, and that was all working. So these three things in summary: active listening, appreciative inquiry, and self-disclosure is key. So on that note, I'm going to bring my colleague back in and see if he can share with me any notes or comments he may have. I'll do somewhat of a shameless plug, but thank you for my colleague including this. I did have a book come out last year with one of my dear friends, Dr. Ernie Gunling, and up in faculty actually at UC Berkeley, and it's Inclusive Leadership to Global Impact. So thank you for that. And you can reach me also through not only the Institute here with York, but through LinkedIn. So on that note, I will stop my share and I'm back.
Yes, thank you. And the first thing before I'll share with you some questions that were coming in, and you know, about the various different things that you covered. I just want to share that I'm extremely happy that you didn't become a ballerina, because then probably we wouldn't have you here to talk about compassionate curiosity. So this is a very self-serving appreciation. But you know, there are a number of questions that came in, and you know, I'm now struggling a little bit with which ones to prioritize. But I think the first one was on the notion of micro-compassions, right? Because this may be, I mean, microaggression or micro inequities and so forth has been taught a lot, but micro compassions may be one of those new concepts. And there are two questions. One is, can you give some more examples of them, and what makes a micro compassion? I guess that's the question. And then, what is the intersection with cultural variability? So I think the question that actually came in, that not all cultures smile in the same way, or where smiling is actually you know, appreciated, you know, but especially between strangers or so. And so I thought that was actually a very interesting comment.
A very good one. Thank you so much. Well, you know, first of all, I'll step back for just a second. Oftentimes, people will confuse compassion with sympathy, and we're talking about empathy. And so when we talk about micro compassions, it's the small things that you do almost without thinking. It's sometimes you have to think about it and be mindful of it, but it's just that little acknowledgement. You know, I was listening to oftentimes when I've taught public speaking and someone is up at the front and I know they're really nervous and they're looking at me as a professor, I would just go. And that they said, you know, Dr. Williams, that was huge. So that's why it's word micro. It's the things that people can read and see and attach a meaning to that helps uplift them. Everything is a microaggression is the opposite. Then that's a microaggression. So in some studies will say that it's the opposite, but it certainly is part of that whole micro. Then you mentioned, well, the second question was? Well,
it was more, I mean, about the example of smiling that you gave, yes. And which is an example of a micro compassion, right? I mean, smiling at someone, probably the cultural variability of those things, right? Or even raising an eyebrow or so. Right?
And that is where being culturally sensitive, doing due diligence is huge. You are absolutely correct. Turned up lips. I remember when I'm processing work in the field, doing my field research, I don't call it smiling. I describe it, you know, instrumentally with saying sides of mouth turned up, lips, you know, teeth showing, not showing, how much is showing. And then maybe some people will say that that's a smile, some not. A smile does not mean happiness. A smile does not mean that I agree. A smile can just be a nervous something or not at all. And oftentimes, sometimes people, if they're going through dental surgeries, I just had someone tell me recently, well, Cheryl, I don't like to smile because I'm working on my teeth. I mean, that's the personal thing, but they shared that with me. With me. So that's where, you know, when you need to be really sensitive to understand where you are. And knowing that, you know, if I'm meeting people from certain parts, a lot of your Asian countries, particularly Japan, others, but certainly Japan, is kind of written about that the smile that we call the American smile is not something done over there. I remember when I was working in Paris, we were doing I was helping one of my colleagues with perhaps some speech writing. And they said, you know, Americans always start off their speeches with a joke. Mm-hmm. You think you are a joke when you do that. And so we don't start off with that, our speeches. And so to connect with the audience, when you're in Paris, French, you know, the French audience, then you're going to want to, start off with maybe a hard fact or something.
Yes.
So the final answer to that, or my one answer, I shouldn't say final answer, is you got to know who you're talking about. That's where cultural competence can come in.
Yeah. So is it, I mean, this is me now, just following up, that the idea of a micro-compassion is actually a small and subtle sign that we give to someone else that shows I understand your experience right now, and I'm connecting with you in your experience. And whatever that signal is, it could be a smile, it could be a raised eyebrow, it could be a hand gesture, but it's not in the gesture itself. It is in that the connection that we signal somehow.
Exactly. In the space now of all the emoticons and emojis and everything, this is huge. Now we know in some parts of the world this is not good. This is not a positive sign. You're like this.
Yes.
So you want to be mindful. But that's with almost any communication, cliche, symbol, nonverbal. It's very contextual to that. So we need to also, that's another thing we need to certainly have in our forefront as we're talking about it. But you nailed it, Yorick, when we're talking about micro compassions, and that really is key to being able to recognize the small things that we do.
Yeah. So there's a connection to the next question that came in, and that is really about the sense of connection that we are creating with that, right? What kind of connection is it, and the naturalness that you talked about. If curiosity is a natural state of our humanity, right? And if even signaling connection or so is kind of, we do this naturally with people that we naturally empathize with. Now, turning it into a skill for inclusive leadership, the question is, why do we lose this natural curiosity? Why would we lose? And then also, it seems to me that this intentional use of micro-compassions or compassionate curiosity needs to counteract some of those natural tendencies we might have to not be compassionate with certain people, or so I mean, I don't know if I'm articulating the question well in the way that it came through here. But there seems to be this loss of this. How do we recover this natural ability and make sure that we are not, I guess, biased in how we use it?
The book answer to that is by seeking and practicing and being open-minded.
Mm.
The antithesis to that is when someone decides to stay where they are, and I'll give you an example of that, then they don't become curious. It's like, once you know everything, think about your world. Once you know everything, you don't need to be curious. That's some other kind of mental description. But, so you need to have that. And by being mindful and recognizing the world is huge, and every single person has their story, and every single person has the lens from which they see the world, and the lens from which you see the world is very, very different. York, you and I both do a lot of work where we use another instrument where there's different layers of going from monocultural mindsets to intercultural mindsets. And the way one gets from a monocultural mindset to an intercultural is through opportunity and experience. So what I would say to everyone is, how do you jumpstart or restart that curiosity of a child? Step into difference and you will happen. Step into a lot of difference and it'll happen, because you want to have psychological safety and you want to have physical safety. Now, kind of in a grand way, if you find yourself at a theme park and you go on a ride that has it going up and down, before you probably jump into that seat, you look at the ride and see people coming off, and you're being curious to check it out. Then you decide to go on the ride or not. So, once again, the book answer, the easy answer, and it's a lot written about this if someone would like to learn it even more, we need to step back into mindfulness, which then is going to realize the difference. And by difference, I'm also meaning something as simple, going to a different restaurant. I know that sounds silly, but it's true. If you go to a place where you've never, because food anthropology is huge. So if you go to a place where it's not typically how they eat, the utensils, what they eat, get curious. What's in there? What's the seasoning? How they're doing it? Why they're doing it?
Right.
I remember one time when I was in India, and in this particular dish you're eating with your hands, my colleague explained to me why your body is pure, and and by touching the food with your five senses and direct to the body, you're keeping all the negative energy out of you. So when you use a metal fork or wooden chopsticks, you're putting something else in the middle of that. So that was fantastic to me. So then, it helps you understand. Likewise, going to concerts, media, arts, travel, one of the best things that can happen for those of you who have either kids that are college age or you are college age, try as best you can to do a study abroad, even if it's just, for a summer, like that, wherever abroad is. So you're in Germany, so abroad to you might be Austria, or abroad to you might be, Namibia in Africa. So all of those places.
California.
Oh yeah, we can just go Orange County, LA, Los Angeles County.
That's right.
Difference. I do that, and my sons have always done that from birth. So to this day, my grown sons, is much easier for them to embrace it, and because they're so inquisitive.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I totally agree that exposing yourself to unfamiliar environments is the trick, right? And I do this even on musical playlists, right?
Yes.
I just randomly pick a letter sometimes, or a genre that I'm not so familiar with, and I just listen, and that even gives me more intentionality. I notice something different, right?
Yes.
And the other thing that I do sometimes is I love interacting with children, actually, to your point about children, that teaches you, children can really teach you to recover that, right?
Yes, they sure can.
There are two questions here that are almost similar, but I just want to bring the first one out first. Do you think that you were talking about where compassionate curiosity is exercised, right? That's the question, relates to where on this spectrum is it most difficult for us, and then the second, the addition was that the participant was thinking that actually it's in the family context where it is probably the hardest. So people we know closest, and it may ironically be the hardest to practice that skill.
My opinion is I would agree with that for sure. Family and those who you think because you said, well, we were both raised by the same parents, or we both lived in the same neighborhood. So you think there's more similarity than difference. So you tend to go, so you don't become curious. You're not compassionate with it because you're responding as if you know it, and then perhaps right in the middle of it, you realize you don't. Realize you don't back. So not only with the family, and it can be your intimate family, that where it's you really need to apply it. In the workplace, particularly when there's hierarchy involved, and that has a very big, deep cultural thing as well, because hierarchy is processed very different across cultures, across ethnic cultures as well. So if I am a boss, or if I'm a supervisor, or I'm an associate, and it's going to be read with higher, it could be read with a higher something than if it's not. So it's not just that you're asked me, where was I for lunch? My boss asked me, where did I go for lunch? How long? Cheryl, I've noticed you've been gone an hour and 10 minutes, like that. And maybe it's a good hour and 10 minutes. Maybe you told me to take 2 hours, but nevertheless, like that. So it still is not only the where, that's important, but it's also the who.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Maybe that links, because you mentioned the workplace, to another question that came in around, I think the participant felt that in the current workplace climate of political correctness, confusion about what language, what words we use, especially from a DE&I perspective, and also the wokeness. How can you, isn't there a big risk? That was the question. Isn't there, in that cultural context, aren't we taking a huge risk in using compassionate curiosity?
Most of the time, what we know, and then I'll give my opinion, is that when people see that you're earnestly and honestly wanting to think, feel, and do the right thing, then you're not going to have any problem with applying compassionate curiosity.
Mm.
When there appears to be hidden agendas, because maybe the past there have been, maybe there's not a psychological safety in the environment, then compassionate curiosity is going to come across as being nosy, or why are you in my business?
Yeah.
And I've had that where people have said, well, you asked me all these 50 questions, you like that, and you don't even know me. Well, that's not compassionate curiosity. That certainly might be curiosity, but it's not compassionate.
Right.
There's a African American themed comic cartoon called Boondocks, and in this Boondocks cartoon, actually, it's the first episode. They have the character, and he's trying to explain when somebody in the neighborhood is not doing what they should. So they said, game recognizes game. And if you take that, what they're saying, if somebody who's not trying to bring them forward, I mean, you can sense that out.
Yes.
So you're going to bring that too. If you're not honest with me, I'm not honest with you, So, and then you've got a spiral effect. I mean, it's not good. It's just not good after that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I responded enough, but that's also my opinion, which matches what we know.
Well, I mean, it only goes to show maybe in the workplace, it takes courage, right? To be compassionate, to be curious,
exactly. It takes
courage
and a safety, a feeling of safety. So even if I don't have courage in the beginning, but if I feel safe to be able to ask this question, then I'm going to get the courage, and then I'm going to ask, and then I'm going to responding to the right problem and the right solution and the right resolution.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and it probably also depends on, you had this interesting story, and this is, I'll come to another question in a second, but when you were talking about living and working in the jungles of Suriname, in the village community, where compassionate curiosity was actually a vehicle for you to belong. Right. I mean, so this, there may be something really important here for anybody who doesn't have a strong sense of belonging or has belonging uncertainty, because oftentimes we then go into a more passive waiting approach where we are expecting the environment to reach out and integrate us. But maybe it may be that that's a situation in which we should use compassionate curiosity in order to connect ourselves to that social environment.
Absolutely. And I sometimes get asked, so why are you so compassionate or passionate about compassion? Curiosity. And before I knew it was called that, and when I was studying to get ready to go into the Amazon via Suriname, like you just mentioned, I knew that I was going to have to, eyes wide open, pay attention, get them to know me before I need to get to know them. And which is another, looking at compassionate curiosity. So I did several trips over there before I went over there to land to actually live for a while. And I absolutely did my homework, not only what you can learn at the libraries and books, but also through the U.S. Embassy. And then once I landed there, going through a university over there, they're talking to paramount chiefs. I went through all the process just to find out how do I do this? So my curiosity of what is it going to take for me to get in and learn about this culture that I can then bring to the world, which is how I looked at it. And you know what? The paramount chief who was living then, Songo Abukoni, I'll name his name, he was phenomenal. He said to me, Cheryl, I only ask one thing in return. Tell our story to the world. Tell it accurately. Because unfortunately, a lot of the stories had been told and it's made exotic, or it's made to be, grand.
Yes.
He said, just tell it the way it is. And I told him for the rest of my life, I was going to dedicate it. And I have.
Beautiful.
He said, and then after that, he opened up all of the it was like 100 some villages And that's just one tribe. And I went spent time in 6 tribes. So
Yes.
that's important. That's important.
Absolutely. What a beautiful thing there is. And maybe this is a really, all of these questions obviously relate a little bit, but one question here is, who carries the burden of compassionate curiosity in a relationship, especially when there are inequities at play? And you mentioned some of the, you talked about racialized contexts or ethnic differences and power dynamics or marginalization. Who has the burden of compassionate curiosity?
That's an excellent question. And we do have a response to that. And by we, I mean this kind of the space. In a perfect world, it's both. But here's what happens because the world is not perfect. It's to the educated and the informed to do it. It's not based on title, power, position, role. It's based on who knows. That's why many organizations, global organizations around the world have committed to doing cultural training, DEIB training. They have rewritten policies, procedures to really include all that, to encompass it, because if I know this, I need to recognize that I might need to take the lead. My colleague or my family member may not know. So so the answer to that question is the informed. And that's how we teach it, like that. Yes. That's why and once again, in my perfect world, everyone is excited and wants to learn about it, in my world.
No, I think it's a perfect response, because we sometimes get into this, right? Is it me or is it you? Shouldn't it be you because of some other reason, and so forth? But you're simply saying the one who is a little, not maybe just not informed, but aware, right? The one who is aware brings that consciousness. And let's not worry about whose role it is, who should or shouldn't, and if the goal is to build connection, then it may not matter. There are so many other questions, and I know that our time is limited, but maybe one or two more. What if we are what about the worrying? And I'm combining two questions now. The worrying to offend, right? How does because sometimes people are really concerned in the way I say something or the way I come across, might I offend? And and also taboo subjects or things that for me are, and maybe that belongs together. I feel something is taboo, then that's when I worry I offend. How do we deal with taboo subjects or subjects where we feel we might offend?
Both of those things will happen. They have happened to me, and they will happen again. That once again is you don't know what you don't know. And once again, what we teach, and I'm going to use it that way, is we apologize. If people can sense your earnest desire to be compassionate, to make their life a little bit better, to make what they're going through a little bit better, because you can, if in that process it's received a little offensive, as soon as you recognize that, you apologize. I'll tell you how that sometimes shows up a lot is when someone may have an ability challenge, particularly if they use a wheelchair for their mobility, or they maybe are on crutches, depending on what it is. And you think opening the door or pushing or something is the correct and proper thing you ask. And they're like, whoa, I didn't ask you to do that. So I'm so sorry, I apologize. In a perfect world, you might ask, you need any help? Can I help you with something? And that's compassionate. And let them ask you that. So that's where sometimes, so if you're offended, and that's and no matter how wonderful anybody is, like that could happen. For taboo subjects, what I do, because I do a lot of sexual harassment training here, as well as employee relations investigations. And you talk about taboo subjects. I also do racial investigations over here. And so for me, what works, and I think others, do your homework. If you know something is taboo, don't be afraid to approach it, but it's how you approach it. I know that when I'm in Israel, and if I'm having a meal with Orthodox men and ultra-Orthodox men, if I'm going to have a glass of wine, it's not going to be from the same bottle, nor will I pour it than someone else. Kosher is kosher is kosher. So I would, so that could be taboo. If I also, why would I serve ribs? I mean, that's kind of silly and like that. But so do your homework. And then if it's find something that's taboo, don't be afraid. Because if the goal is you want to know, keep the goal in mind. And then you kind of ask the questions where you don't. And people, I'm not saying beat around the bush. Sometimes, though, you do have to be indirect. Because remember, many cultures are indirect. So if you know that you are a direct communicator and you know you may be more with indirect cultures or a person, then you might want to rethink how you ask the question. Just look at me telling you I'm hungry, take me to eat. I would say, we've been working a long time now. You want to grab a bite to eat? Something like that.
Yeah.
That feels better.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes, I mean, I've found that sometimes making the implicit explicit is actually very useful to say, this may be a real taboo subject, and I can understand if you don't want to talk about it, but I'm really curious to find out about this or that. So that gives the other person a choice. They can simply, I'm not comfortable, or you may find out that it's actually a very comfortable situation. Yeah.
Yes.
Great. I mean, I think we covered most of the questions that came in, but Cheryl, before we close, and we have just a few more minutes, are there any like final words of advice you'd like to share?
My final thing is please include right now, from this moment on, the spirit of compassion and curiosity. We've only given you a thumbnail, look, a thumbnail of what's going on. Read about it. There's some wonderful materials out there. We have materials out there. I'll link back to Jorg and the Institute, so we can send you information if you'd like, the Inclusive Leadership Institute. But it's real easy to do. Even if you just start with micro compassions, or start with, recognizing that, what do I need how can I make someone else's day better? How can I make someone else's day better? Like that. And typically that's because you need to understand what is better. What does better mean? Like that. And I do it. I mean, I do it all the time. I mean, I will, if I know I have a colleague that's going through quite a bit right now with her health, and I'm going to go visit her at the hospital later on this afternoon. And this is but not only will I maybe take some flowers or something, but I might take, a goofy picture that she and I did, when we were being goofy I was much younger.
You were. Oh.
When I did goofy stuff. So she will see that as a compassionate, and the curiosity will be, I'm hoping that, she'll remember that. And so it can be such small things. It can also be very large. It can also be very grand.
Yeah. Well, what strikes me here is that it comes back to intention, right? I mean, I think your reminder is what makes this work is our honest, authentic intention, and you highlighted that, and maybe making it almost a daily practice to set our intention in that direction might make a huge difference to practicing compassionate curiosity as part of our inclusive leadership toolkit. So I really want to thank you, Cheryl, for sharing this with us, for guiding us through this exploration. I hope that our attendees today got a lot out of the discussion. And if you're seeing it on replay, that this is equally as exciting. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you. Thank you very much.